Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm going to be ranking the films of Christopher Nolan. This is a lot of people's favorite director of all time. He's one of my favorite directors of all time, definitely in my top five. And I'm excited to cover his films today. Only 12 films to cover, which is great. Not as long as the filmography of someone like Kurosawa. So there's not too many films to get through today. Hopefully, we get a lot more from him. But yeah, let's get into the list. At number 12, I have the following. This is going to be most people's bottom pick when ranking Christopher Nolan films, only because it's the first film he ever made. It is in black and white. Most people haven't seen it, although you should go watch it because this is an amazing film for a directorial debut. It is pretty short, too. I think it's only like 70 minutes long, so you can crank through it pretty quickly. Yeah, I really like this film. I think it's an awesome, awesome first film for a director to make. Other films that come to mind are like Pi, as far as like really, really good, unique directorial debuts, but not many directors can make a film this solid on their first go. I mean, most directors don't. So the following at 12, at number 11, I have Insomnia. Now, in any other director's filmography, this would probably be a lot higher. The only thing is that it doesn't feel quite like a Christopher Nolan film. It kind of lacks that high concept that bends your mind while you're watching it, and it also lacks really like acting that would pull you into the film. I think Robin Williams and Pacino are amazing in this. I just don't think that their performances are enough to make this film as captivating as some of the other films on this list. Like my number 10 pick, The Dark Knight Rises. I mean, if I watch this film tomorrow, it might be higher on my list, and maybe not, but I do really, really like this film. When I first saw it in theaters, I liked it more than anybody else who saw it with me, and I really, really liked Bane. I thought the way that they portrayed him was sick, and I'm also a huge fan of the Nightfall comics. I read those before I watched this film, and I still thought Bane was done really well. I wasn't really mad that he wasn't a huge hulking guy like they do the Hulk, but I thought the creative direction was done well, and it's a pretty good finale. It's like 95% there, I think. I think there's like a couple things missing or a couple things should have been taken out, but it's a pretty good finale to maybe the best trilogy ever made. I mean, obviously it's hard to compete with like something like Lord of the Rings, but it is one of the greatest film trilogies ever made. And at number 9, I have the first entry in that trilogy, the Batman Begins. The reason why this one's higher than The Dark Knight Rises is because it portrays Gotham more like Gotham is in the comics. I know a lot of people say that. They have that same feeling, and I don't know why they went away from that in The Dark Knight. I really liked the vibe he was able to create in Batman Begins with Gotham, and it sucks that we got like more of a standardized. I think the Dark Knight's filmed in Chicago. I think that's right. So it's more of a minimalist type city, whereas Gotham in the comics and in Batman Begins is kind of like this sprawling old Gothic looking city. I really like Ra's al Ghul in this too. I think Liam Neeson portrays him amazingly. It's a really, really good origin story. Probably the best origin film we've ever gotten for a superhero. Iron Man's pretty sick, but for me, it's Batman Begins. So I could talk about Batman all day. So I got Batman Begins at 9. At number 8, I have Dunkirk. Yeah, Dunkirk's a weird film for me because visually and sonically, like listening to it, it's amazing. The cinematography is out of this world. The sound design is maybe the best ever in a Nolan film. But there's like no acting, there's no dialogue, and I know that that was done on purpose, but it does take a little bit away from the film. And I know some people that just turns them off. They're never gonna watch Dunkirk again because there's like no characters. But for me, I thought that it was an immersive experience, and I would definitely rewatch it, with a really good sound system. I would definitely rewatch it in IMAX because that was an amazing experience. But for me, it's one of those more one-time war films. Maybe you watch it once or twice. There's just not enough there to hook me to bring me back. Especially with films like All Quiet on the Western Front, 1917 coming out in like the same time frame. I'd rather go and rewatch those, to be honest. So Dunkirk is at 8, and you might be like, well, why did you put it above Batman then? It's because it is brilliant in what it did technically. And from a filmmaker's perspective, I have to admire what was done with Dunkirk. At number 7, I have The Prestige. This is a film that I was obsessed with when I was a kid. When I first watched this, I think I watched this as a double feature one night with The Illusionist, and completely forgot about The Illusionist. It's still a good movie. I love Ed Norton, but The Prestige just blew me away, and it got me obsessed with magic. So after watching this film, I went and started watching David Blaine videos, learning how to do his card tricks. It got me into magic in a way that I will never forget. So for that personal reason, The Prestige is special to me. Other than that, it's just an amazing film. Christian Bale is phenomenal in this. It's one of Hugh Jackman's best performances. You get a David Bowie cameo out of nowhere, so that's sick. Yeah, there's a lot of things to love about The Prestige. Every film on this list I could talk about for hours, so I'm going to try not to rant too much. All of these films, with maybe the exception of the following, I will probably do full analysis videos on in the future. So if you guys want to see like a full detailed breakdown analysis of Christopher Nolan's films, let me know in the comments, and I will get to those. At number 6, I have Tenant. Tenant was absolutely mind-blowing when I saw it in theaters. It still blows my mind, but that was a concept that I've never thought of before in my life. Before Tenant, the idea of going backwards through time had never occurred to me until I watched this film. So whenever a film can introduce a new concept like that to me, it's amazing. Especially, I saw it when I was 20 years old. So, I knew a couple things about physics, and I still didn't really think that way before. And I mean, conceptually, it's probably the best film he's ever made, with the exception of one other film, which we'll talk about in a second here. But the concept for this is so strong. And I feel like Washington's performance was so good that I don't really care that the main character is called protagonist and he doesn't really have a backstory. That doesn't really bother me at all. The film just sweeps you away and takes you on this adventure that I don't really care too much about the characters. The concept just carries it so much, and I feel like it's kind of what Dunkirk lacked. I don't know how you can make a concept film out of a war film, but Tenet had this ability to like not focus on the characters too much, but still make a film that was incredibly engaging, and you still felt for the characters. I mean, that scene at the end, like, it's a little heartbreaking, It's like, damn, like, I'm never gonna see you again, but you're gonna have a whole life with me. It's a confusing mess, and I can't wait to analyze it one day. Speaking of confusing messes, at number 5 I have Memento. Wow. When I first saw this film, I was very confused. There's 2 films in my life where I went out seeking, looking on Google, what are the most confusing films? What are the most mind-bending films? That's types of films I like, especially after watching a film that I'll get to in a second here. But when I watched Memento, I was legitimately confused. And there's another film that did that for me. It's called Primer. I don't know if anybody's seen Primer, but equally as confusing, if not more. And that is something that I wish more films were able to do. Not saying that like I'm too smart for the complicated films, but it is hard to fool an audience like Memento does, and it does it so well that you have to go back and you have to rewatch this film and rewatch it and rewatch it and watch it in reverse. You can watch this film in reverse, and it adds to the story and makes more sense. This is a film that's just an absolute enigma, and you have to pull it apart to really understand it. I love this film, and it's at my number 5. Now, getting to the top 4, I mean, these top 4 I think are films that are like absolutely in the top 100 films ever made, and to have 4 films from one director on that list is very impressive. So that speaks to how great Christopher Nolan is, and you could probably work Memento, maybe Tenet, into that list. Probably not Tenet. I don't know if I'd put that in the top 100 movies, but these next 4 I think are just like some of the best pieces of art I've ever consumed. And at number 4, I have the best biopic I've ever seen in my life. I watched it this year. It's going to be my film of the year, I think, for sure. I hope it runs away with all the Oscars, and it's Oppenheimer. Cillian Murphy in this is amazing. One of the best eye-acting performances I've ever seen in my life, and definitely the best biopic I've ever seen. It made you feel the anxiety of being Oppenheimer. And from somebody who's read the book, it was brilliant how much they actually fit into this movie. And I mean, the bomb sequence, I could rant about this film all day. In fact, I did in my Oppenheimer review, so you can go check that out. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Oppenheimer. At number three, I have Interstellar. Now these top three, really, you could, like the Ridley Scott, you could just switch them around um, any given day, and I don't really care. They're just on the same level for me. But Interstellar, I have at number three. This film is incredibly deep. I didn't always fully get it. Like, I got it, but I didn't fully get it until I watched it recently with a couple buddies. And wow, yeah, this is an incredibly deep film. And I'm at the point in my life now where I'm starting to think it might be better than 2001. I know that's kind of like blasphemy in the film community, like nothing's better than 2001, but Interstellar has everything that 2001 has plus better characters. And besides 2001 coming out when it did, which is what makes it such a great film, it's so impressive for coming out in 1968. Interstellar, I think, is equally impressive to me. When I saw it in IMAX, is like the top three film experience I've ever had in my life. Is wild experience. And yeah, I love that film so deeply. But there's two films that I've watched more by Christopher Nolan. These next two films are in my most watched films of all time. If I had to give you a top three, it's probably Revenge of the Sith and these two films are like my most rewatched films, because like I just cannot stop being entertained by them. At number two, I have Inception. Like I said, this could be number one any day of the week. Inception, when I first saw it, I saw it in 2010, so I was about 10 years old, and it absolutely blew my mind. I had never thought about dreams that way before in my life. Ever since I saw this movie, I swear my dreams have been way more vivid, and I've been better at lucid dreaming since I watched Inception. It blew my mind. I never thought films could be made like this until I saw this film. And I knew who Leonardo DiCaprio was. I'd seen some of his films, and watching this, I was like, whoa, this is like when the actor, like the greatest actor alive, meets the greatest director of all time, or alive, and they come together and make something that's just absolutely mind-blowingly amazing. And yeah, I could rant about Inception all day. It's just wow. I still can't believe this film exists. I mean, that goes for a lot of Christopher Nolan films, but like, this is a marvel in cinematic achievement. So Inception at number two. At number one, the only reason why this is number one, and you know which film it is, it's number one for almost everybody, but it's because of my deep obsession with Batman. I've read hundreds of Batman comic books. I've played the games. I've spent a lot of time consuming Batman content, and the most watched film I have in the Batman universe is The Dark Knight. I don't think I've watched any film more besides, like I said, maybe Revenge of the Sith. I love this film so much. I can quote it line for line. I know when every line's coming up, like, I love this film so much, as so many people do. And just to touch on some of the things that make it awesome that so many people have said before, obviously Heath Ledger's performance is maybe the best performance ever on screen. To me, there's not one performance that I get lost in more than Heath Ledger as the Joker. When I'm watching it, I'm like trying to see Heath Ledger. I'm trying to see the guy who was in The Knight's Tale. I'm trying to see that guy, but he's just gone. He's completely gone. He's not in that body anymore. That body is the Joker. And it's an achievement that I've never seen anybody come close to what he did with the Joker. So that alone obviously makes this film one of the best films ever. Some people put it number one. That alone puts that film there. But you add on to it this cool effect that I've talked about before, but it has two climaxes, which is amazing. And I think Revenge of the Sith also does this, and Inception to a degree, and that might be why I rewatch these films so often. But there's a point in The Dark Knight where you're like, oh, this film's over. Like, it's wrapping up now. Like, I can kind of feel it. But then there's a whole nother arc to happen. And that is amazing, especially as somebody who loves watching movies. I love sitting in the theater. I don't care if the film's 4 hours long. Like, I want to be there and immersed in the story. That's just something that's... It always amazes me. Like, every time I've seen this film 100 times, every time I watch it, I'm like, oh yeah, right, there's another part to this. So I love The Dark Knight. It's endlessly enjoyable for me. I don't think I'll ever watch it and be like, ah, man, let's turn this off. I've seen this too many times. I will always sit through The Dark Knight because it's one of the greatest films ever made, along with just about every film on this list. Christopher Nolan is definitely one of the best directors of all time. I think he's solidified in my top 5, top 10 pretty easily. And I've consumed a lot of directors. There's a lot of directors I love. I infamously love Kurosawa. I love Kubrick. I love Kobayashi. I love Lynch. And Nolan is right there too. So greatest filmmaker of my generation, I think. I think it's pretty easy to say that. You know, Denis Villeneuve's close, but I think he needs a couple more films to catch up to Chris. But yeah, that's my rankings for the Chris Nolan films. Let me know in the comments where you guys would order them. There's not too many films, so I feel like you guys can leave like the whole list. But I would love to know like where you guys would order them. Which ones did I rank too high? Which ones did I rank too low? Do you think The Dark Knight's just always going to be number one, or do you prefer Interstellar? Do you prefer Inception? And if you can make a little case for that, I love reading your guys' comments. So yeah, let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That always helps boost this channel in the algorithm. Let me know also who you want to see me rank next. I might do Denis next because him and Chris just have been like the two goats while I've been alive. But let me know in the comments. As always, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one, and peace.